everyone, it's Carolyn and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. For today's video, I thought I would do something a little bit different and I would share some of the struggles that I experienced when I was breastfeeding and pumping, and to give you some of the tips that I learned along the way on how to overcome these types of struggles. So right off the bat, I just want to say that I am not a doctor and I am not a lactation consultant. I'm just a mom who breastfed and pumped for both of her babies for the first year. So I don't know you and I don't know your baby. So I just thought maybe sharing some of my experiences could help someone who's watching this video, and at the very least, maybe some of you can relate to what I'm going through. So with all that being said, let's get right into struggle number one. All right, so struggle number one for me was managing what my expectations were. So a lot of times just in casual conversation with expectant moms, I'll hear people say something along the lines of, oh, I'll breastfeed if it comes naturally. And I just feel like phrases like this set you up for failure, because although breastfeeding is a completely natural process, it doesn't come naturally for a lot of people. If it did, then that's great, but breastfeeding is a learning process for both the mom and the baby. Each one of us is doing something that we've never done before for the first time, myself included. So I really didn't have a lot of exposure firsthand to breastfeeding. Really the only person I knew firsthand that had breastfed was my sister, and unfortunately she lives several hours away. So my exposure was somewhat limited, and I had signed up to take a breastfeeding class, but unfortunately I had to get induced with my first child, and I never ended up getting to take the class. So I really didn't know what to expect. So I really think that knowing what to expect is half the battle. If you can, try and get to a breastfeeding class. There's also a lot of really helpful books about breastfeeding. And after the baby comes, if you find that you're struggling, then definitely take advantage of the lactation consultants at the hospital where you deliver. Most hospitals even have breastfeeding groups that you can go to after you're discharged from the hospital. And most pediatricians are a great resource for if you need to find a lactation consultant to help you at your own home. So what I'm really trying to say here is that the beginning stages of breastfeeding can be somewhat frustrating, but hang in there because it definitely gets easier. All right, so struggle number two is the fact that when you are breastfeeding, no one else can help you feed the baby. And for whatever reason, this is something I really hadn't thought about when I did choose to breastfeed. Now, I think that breastfeeding is really hard in the beginning, but if you stick with it, I do think that it is the easiest way to feed your baby in the long run. In the first few weeks of breastfeeding, it is really important to try to breastfeed your baby as close to exclusively as possible, because this is what is going to help build your milk supply. Now, to be completely honest, I had some unexpected resentment towards my husband for the fact that he couldn't get up and just feed the baby in the middle of the night. And obviously that is not his fault at all, but these were some really real feelings that I had to work through. So what we ended up doing was find ways that he could help with the baby in other ways besides feeding him. So what we would do is when the baby would wake up, my husband would get the baby, he would change his diaper, we swaddle him, and then give the baby to me, and I would nurse the baby back to sleep. Then eventually our pattern somewhat changed when the baby started sleeping longer stretches at night, and we weren't up quite as frequently. What I would do is when my baby would wake up at night, I would take care of the night feedings, change the diaper, nurse the baby back to sleep, and then early in the morning, like several hours before my husband had to go to work, he would get up, deal with the baby, and I would take like at least 2-hour uninterrupted nap before he would have to go to work. And I know 2 hours doesn't really seem like a lot, but that power nap really gave me the energy that I needed to get through the morning. And then I would try and nap at some point in the afternoon when the baby was sleeping. So struggle number 3 is about clogged ducts. And clogged ducts are obstruction of milk flow somewhere in your breast. And if it happens on your nipple, that's a milk blister. I'm going to be talking about that next. But for me, I would notice a lump or swollen area, usually on just one breast, and it would be tender, sometimes painful, or reddened. I found that I would be more prone to getting clogged ducts in the days after I would work, since when I was at work, I wasn't able to pump as frequently as the baby would typically nurse when I was at home. So to get rid of it, I would try to nurse the baby as frequently as I could on the affected side. Now for me, I was never able to clear a clogged duct with pumping. That's not to say it's not possible, that was just my experience. But babies are definitely the most effective way to drain milk. So I would just try to nurse as frequently as I could, but also being careful not to neglect the unaffected side. So every couple times of nursing, I would nurse on the unaffected side, or I would pump it just so I wouldn't lose supply on the unaffected breast. Now before I would nurse, I would either take a really warm washcloth and place it over myself, or preferably I would take a really hot shower, like as hot as I could tolerate. And then I would massage the swollen, tender area, massage it towards the nipple, and try to like help loosen the clogged area. And then I would nurse directly after, and usually that would work really well, and the baby would nurse and the clog would be removed. When I was nursing, I would also massage the area as well. Now, every now and then I would get a really stubborn clog, and when that happens, you can try dangle feeding. And dangle feeding, you will feel ridiculous, but it does work. So what you do is you lay the baby on the bed or lay the baby on the floor, and then you sort of get on all fours over the baby and sort of dangle over them. And the gravity in this nursing position will help with dislodging the clog. So I was really prone to getting clogged ducts with my first child, so I did two things to help prevent them from happening. So the first thing that I did is I would take lecithin supplements. And lecithin is a supplement that helps to decrease the viscosity of your milk. So if I had a clog, I would take a lecithin capsule 3 times a day, and then once the clog was gone, after maybe a week or 2, I would decrease that to just once a day. And I took lecithin for probably the majority of the first year that I was nursing, just because I was so prone to clogged ducts. And then the second thing that I did is I could not wear a bra with underwire. So every time I would wear an underwire bra, it would be really uncomfortable, and then I would end up with a clogged duct. So what I ended up having to do was wear nursing bras that did not have underwire for the entire time that I was nursing both of my children. Alright, so like I just mentioned, struggle number 4 is about milk blisters. And the only way to describe a milk blister is with a 4-letter word. They are horrible, and I would not wish them on my worst enemy. They are also sometimes referred to as milk blebs, just so you know. Now, what they are is a tiny bit of skin that grows over the opening of the milk duct on your nipple, and the milk backs up behind it, and they usually look like just a very tiny white dot on your nipple, but you will know that you have one because it will be unbearably painful when you are nursing. So for me, it was entirely too painful to nurse if I had a milk blister. So what I would try doing is soaking my breast in a bowl of warm water and Epsom salt. So the ratio is 1 cup of warm water to 2 teaspoons of Epsom salt. So try soaking your breast in that mixture, and then immediately before nursing, place a warm, wet washcloth on your breast, and then try nursing and see if it will resolve. Now for me, this tended not to work, and it would be entirely too painful to nurse with the milk blister, so I had to try and remove it. So what I would do is I would go into the shower, and again, get in a really hot shower, like the hottest shower that you can tolerate. So once you're in the shower, try rubbing your nipple with a wet washcloth, and then gently, with like a clean fingernail, try and scrape the area to to remove that little white dot. So this is not very pleasant, but once you do this, you are immediately able to nurse without any pain. And then I would always use nipple cream several times a day until the area was completely healed. So struggle number 5 is about breastfeeding in public. And for whatever reason, breastfeeding in public is a controversial topic. But as a breastfeeding mom, you have the right to breastfeed in any place that you are legally allowed to be. So unless you are trespassing, you are good to breastfeed in that place. Now, in all my years of breastfeeding, I never had anyone come up and give me any negative comments about it. And I think that part of that reason is because of the way that I chose to breastfeed in public. And I know that some moms are really comfortable breastfeeding, and good for them, but I just got more comfortable doing it in a more discreet manner than some people. And no matter how you choose to breastfeed, you just got to do what you're comfortable with. So some people prefer to use a breastfeeding cover, but that was never my personal preference because I think breastfeeding with a cover just tends to actually draw attention to you. So what I chose to use was the 2-shirt method. So if I knew I was going to be out in public with the baby would probably be hungry at some point and I would be breastfeeding, I would choose to wear an outfit with a tank top and then another shirt over it. So usually the tank top was a nursing tank top, but really any tank top will work just fine. So what I would do is I would roll the top shirt up, and that would cover like the top part of your breast. And then you pull in your baby, and then you pull the tank top down. So really, when you pull the tank top down, no area is being exposed because the baby is covering your breast, the tank top is covering your stomach, and your top shirt is covering the top of your breast. Now, there are a lot of companies that make nursing clothing, but I just found that they were really awkward and they weren't really flattering, so using the 2-shirt method I thought was really convenient, and then you can just use clothes that you already have. You don't have to go out and buy something extra. Now, my only other tip for breastfeeding in public is just to scope out a really good spot. So I found that things like restaurant booths, park benches, and dressing rooms are really good areas to breastfeed in because A, you just have a supportive area to sit in, and then you also have a spot to put down like your diaper bag or your purse. Now, if you are with someone else, I always found it helpful if they could angle themselves a little bit in front of you, and that would just give you like a semi-private space until you got your baby latched. Alright, so struggle number 6 is something I was really worried about before I had my second child, and that is how to breastfeed the toddler at home. Now, when my daughter was born, my son was just shy of turning 2, and I can only assume that he had no recollection of breastfeeding himself. So I just tried to be really candid with him in explaining that this is how babies eat, this is how mommies comfort their babies when they're sad or they're scared. Now it can be really tricky to nurse a newborn when you also have an active toddler. So I always found using a boppy to be really helpful, or any other breastfeeding pillow. So having the boppy would help to support the baby so that it would free up another hand where you could read a book, hand your child something, or let's be honest, change the channel on the TV because yes, this is real life and sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. But to be perfectly honest, I don't have any secrets. There is no magic trick. Sometimes there will be tantrums, but you just do the best that you can in setting your toddler up with some sort of activity that can hopefully occupy them for like 10 or 15 minutes while you nurse the baby. Things like puzzles and coloring, trucks and trains, or even just giving them like a snack, anything that will hopefully keep them occupied so that you can nurse your baby. Now, all I can say is that it does get easier as your toddler gets used to this whole new process, and then also gets easier as the baby gets older because they will not only nurse more efficiently, but they'll be nursing less often. All right, so I'm just gonna switch gears a little bit and talk about some of my pumping struggles and issues. And the first that I'm going to talk about is building a freezer stash before you return to work. So my maternity leave was almost 4 months long, so I'm really lucky that I had a nice long maternity leave and I had plenty of time to try and build a freezer stash. Now, building a freezer stash is not a necessity, but I'm a nurse and my job can sometimes be unpredictable, and even though legally I was entitled to take as many pumping breaks as I needed, I knew realistically I would have some days where it just was not an option. So I just felt more at ease knowing that I had extra milk stored in the freezer that could be used if I didn't have a chance to take all the pumping breaks that I would take on a normal basis. So with all that being said, if you are a full-time breastfeeding mom, anything that you are pumping is above and beyond what the baby needs. So if you are at the point where your milk supply is well regulated to suit your baby's needs, do not be discouraged if it takes several pumping sessions to produce enough to give one bottle or one feed to your baby. This is completely normal. So I always found that my milk supply was the highest in the morning. So after my baby had a really good nursing session, I would try and pump right after that, since that tended to be the time that I would get the most milk pumping. Alright, so lastly, I just wanted to talk about dealing with low pumping volumes. So pumping enough milk while you are at work can be incredibly stressful. But just so you know, the amount of milk that you pump on a day-to-day basis can really vary, and having a low volume day every now and then is perfectly normal. Also, things like stress, birth control, your monthly cycle, dieting, those can all have a negative effect on the amount of milk that you're making. If I saw a trend that I was making less milk while I was pumping at work, the first thing that I would do is try and replace my pumping parts. So things like your valves and your membranes can wear out over time, so I would replace those, and I would usually notice an immediately increase in the amount of milk that I was able to pump. The second thing that I would do, or also I usually do these at the same time, is increase the amount of water that I'm drinking. Water is so important for making enough milk, and if I was having a day at work where I found I really wasn't pumping as much as I usually was, it usually coincided with it being a really busy day and I wasn't drinking enough water. When I would be at home with the baby, I would definitely try to nurse as frequently as I could, because nursing my baby when we were together was a great way for me to build my supply back up. Alright, the last thing that I would also do was try to incorporate more oats into my diet. Oats are a great, natural, easy way to increase the amount of milk that you make. So I would either eat oatmeal or I would try and eat breakfast bars that contain oats. And then I would also use things like fenugreek and brewer's yeast. Those are also two other substances that are known to increase milk supply. So I would add fenugreek into smoothies, because I pretty much drink a smoothie every single day. And I would also make lactation cookies using oats and brewer's yeast. And just a fun fact, if you make any cookie recipe and throw in either oats, brewer's yeast, fenugreek, you can call it a lactation cookie. And if you tell your husband that you have made lactation cookies, he will be afraid to eat them, and that means that you get all the cookies that you want. I will leave a link in the description box to an article that will give you all the dosing instructions that you need if you did want to use something like brewer's yeast or fenugreek to increase your milk supply. Alright, so if you made it to this point, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you found this video useful and that you could relate to the things that I was talking about. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you are new, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!